In this channel, I transform Wikipedia articles into video content, making it easier for you to explore the topics you care about. If you have a specific article in mind, feel free to request it in the comments or message me directly. George Washington's presidency began on April 30th, 1789, with his inauguration in New York City, making him the first president of the United States. Washington's rise to the presidency was a natural continuation of his pivotal role in American history. As Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army during the American Revolutionary War, and later as President of the Constitutional Convention of 1787, Washington had established himself as a central figure among the Founding Fathers. His leadership and character were widely respected, and although he desired to retire from public life, he felt a sense of duty to serve as the nation's first president under the newly ratified Constitution. In the 1788 to 1789 presidential election, Washington was unanimously elected by the Electoral College, an achievement he would repeat in the 1792 election, making him the only U.S. president ever to be elected unanimously. His presidency officially ended on March 4, 1797, when his successor John Adams took office, establishing the federal government. Upon taking office, Washington was faced with the enormous task of shaping the new federal government. One of his first responsibilities was to appoint key officials in the executive and judicial branches. Washington carefully selected individuals who he believed were the most qualified and who represented different regions and viewpoints, helping to establish a government that was seen as balanced and fair. Washington's first cabinet included Alexander Hamilton as Secretary of the Treasury, Thomas Jefferson as Secretary of State, Henry Knox as Secretary of War, and Edmund Randolph as Attorney General. This group would help Washington navigate the complex political landscape of the new nation, although it would also reflect the deep ideological divisions that would soon surface. Economic policies and Hamilton's influence. One of the most significant aspects of Washington's presidency was his support for Alexander Hamilton's economic policies. Hamilton, as Secretary of the Treasury, proposed a comprehensive financial plan to stabilize the American economy and lay the groundwork for future growth. This plan included the federal assumption of state debts, the establishment of the first Bank of the United States, the creation of a uniform currency through the U.S. Mint, and the imposition of tariffs and taxes, including the controversial excise tax on whiskey. The implementation of these policies was not without opposition. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, who preferred an agrarian-based economy and feared that Hamilton's plans would lead to excessive centralization of power, led the opposition. The debate over Hamilton's financial plan marked the beginning of the first political parties in the United States. Hamilton's supporters formed the Federalist Party, while Jefferson and Madison's followers became known as the Democratic-Republican Party. Domestic challenges and the Whiskey Rebellion. Washington's presidency was also marked by significant domestic challenges. One of the most notable was the Whiskey Rebellion of 1794. The rebellion arose in western Pennsylvania as a protest against the federal excise tax on whiskey, which small farmers saw as an unfair burden. The situation escalated to the point where federal tax collectors were attacked, and open rebellion seemed imminent. In a decisive move, Washington personally led a militia force of 12,950 men to suppress the rebellion, making him the only sitting U.S. president to lead troops in the field. The show of force quickly brought the rebellion to an end, demonstrating the federal government's willingness and ability to enforce its laws. This event was crucial in establishing the authority of the new federal government and ensuring that federal laws would be respected across the states. Foreign policy and neutrality. In foreign affairs, Washington's presidency was characterized by his commitment to maintaining peace and neutrality, particularly as Europe was embroiled in the French Revolutionary Wars. Despite pressure from various factions within the U.S. to support either Britain or France, Washington believed that the young nation was too fragile to become entangled in European conflicts. In 1793, Washington issued the Proclamation of Neutrality, declaring that the United States would remain neutral in the conflict between Britain and France. This decision was met with mixed reactions at home, with some, like Thomas Jefferson, arguing that the U.S. should support France, its revolutionary ally. Others, like Alexander Hamilton, supported neutrality to avoid jeopardizing the nation's economic interests, particularly with Britain. Washington's commitment to neutrality was further solidified through the Jay Treaty with Britain in 1794. The treaty, negotiated by Chief Justice John Jay, sought to resolve lingering issues from the Revolutionary War and prevent another conflict with Britain. While the treaty helped avoid war, it was highly controversial, particularly among Jeffersonian Republicans who saw it as overly conciliatory to Britain. Despite the controversy, Washington believed the treaty was necessary to maintain peace and protect American interests. Another important diplomatic achievement of Washington's presidency was the Treaty of San Lorenzo, also known as Pinckney's Treaty, with Spain in 1795. The treaty established the boundary between the United States and Spanish Florida and secured American access to the Mississippi River and the Port of New Orleans, which were vital for the economic development of the Western territories. The rise of political parties. One of the most significant and unintended consequences of Washington's presidency was the rise of political parties. Washington himself was deeply concerned about the growing partisanship in the government and feared that political factions would threaten the unity of the nation. Despite his efforts to remain above party politics, the ideological divisions within his cabinet, particularly between Hamilton and Jefferson, led to the formation of the first political parties. Hamilton's Federalists supported a strong central government, a robust financial system, and close ties with Britain, while Jefferson's Democratic Republicans advocated for states' rights, an agrarian economy, and support for revolutionary France. These divisions became increasingly pronounced during Washington's second term, contributing to the contentious political environment that would characterize American politics for years to come. Washington's farewell address and legacy. As his second term drew to a close, Washington decided to step down from the presidency, setting a critical precedent for the peaceful transfer of power. In his farewell address, published in 1796, Washington reflected on his years of service and offered advice to the nation. He warned against the dangers of political parties and factions, emphasized the importance of national unity, and advised the United States to avoid entangling alliances with foreign nations. Washington's farewell address is considered one of the most important documents in American history, offering a vision for the country that would guide future leaders. His decision to voluntarily relinquish power after 2 terms set a precedent that was followed by subsequent presidents until Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 20th century. This tradition was eventually codified in the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution, limiting presidents to 2 terms in office. George Washington's presidency established many of the practices and principles that continue to define the American political system. His leadership during the nation's formative years helped ensure the survival and success of the fledgling republic. Today, Washington is remembered not only as a founding father and military leader, but also as a president who placed the nation's interests above his own, setting a standard of integrity and service that remains an inspiration to leaders around the world.